Hello and welcome to another episode of Video Game Reviews. Today I'll be talking about Valkyria Chronicles 1 and 4 on the Nintendo Switch. These are two separate games which can be purchased together as a bundle or individually. One of the main reasons that I'm lumping them together into a single review is that the first game allowed me to capture footage with the Switch's built-in function, but the fourth game only allows still image capture. I'll show you a few still images from part 4, just so you can see that the graphical style and quality remains unchanged between the two games. The characters are different, but the look is otherwise pretty much identical, which I don't think is a bad thing in this case because they've managed to achieve a distinctive and appealing presentation. So what do these games play like? Well, to be honest, I don't think I've ever played anything quite like the Valkyria Chronicles games before, which is, in itself, something of an accomplishment on the part of the developers. Essentially, they're turn-based strategy games with some significant real-time elements mixed in. Once you select a character to control from the map of the battlefield, you assume real-time control of that character as you move them, within their movement range. And while you're doing this, you can be fired upon by any enemies who can see you, as long as you're within their attack range. And to be honest with you, that at times was a source of frustration and took some getting used to because I love turn-based strategy games, but I don't really play 3D shooters. And so just trying to move around in something as basic as trying to move around in a 3D environment while getting shot at was, I don't like it. But it does kind of work here. There's an adjustment period and I was like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. But anyways, once you've moved your character into position and you want to attack, you press the R button to enter aim mode. And, you use that to line up your shot, and you can do headshots and stuff like that. And then I think you press that A button to actually execute your attack, which happens not in real time. Yeah, not exactly. It's your attack is automated. And so your character automatically fires off however many rounds they get per attack. So so for units like snipers or troops with bazookas, they get one shot. Scouts and engineers fire 5 shots per attack, and your machine gun toting assault troopers fire, a whole barrage. Now, between battles, you can return to headquarters and use money to pay your mechanics to create upgrades to armor, weapons, and your tanks. You can also spend your experience to level up your troops. One important difference with these games is that you don't level up individual characters, but rather all characters in a class level up at the same time. So for example, all snipers, all engineers, all scouts, you level up the class, not the character, which frankly is pretty nice considering the fact that there is permadeath. Potentially, it's not super easy to suffer from permadeath. You do have the opportunity to evacuate fallen troops. As long as you get to the troop before an enemy soldier gets to the troop, then you evacuate them. If the enemy troop gets to your fallen soldier first, then that troop is permadead. So you got a little bit of wiggle room there to avoid the permadeath. But anyways, the point being that it's nice that if you, say, for example, lose a sniper, whatever sniper you recruit to replace him is the same level. So it kind of helps alleviate some of the punishment from the permadeath. Another very important difference in how you play these games, the Valkyria Chronicles games, has to do with stat buff abilities. In this game, they're called orders, and they basically function as spells. I have a habit of underutilizing buff spells in RPGs because oftentimes, I just don't need them. But I would say that in the Valkyria Chronicles games, they are basically an essential part of your strategy. They're almost not I would say they're not optional. And it took me a while to catch on to that. You know, like instead of positioning every member of your entire squad to take actions, a lot of times in a battle, it can be more effective to rely on making more moves with like around 1 to maybe 3 characters who are well enhanced with buffs. You just want to like really beef up a few characters and get them in there to do what they need to do. And, you know, and the rest can pretty much hang out around your base so it doesn't get taken. But like I kind of alluded to, it does depend on the circumstances of the particular battle. You know, and like I was saying, I found this, being someone who never really uses buff spells, I found this really counterintuitive due to my usual play style. But adapting my strategy was literally a game changer, you know, and really allowed me to finish these games, to be honest. Now, on to the compare and contrast of these two games, Part 1 and Part 4. As I've already mentioned, the presentation in both visuals and audio are extremely consistent between the two games. As I've mentioned, I really enjoyed the visuals, the music, and sound effects are also on point, by the way. However, the voice acting in both games, and there is a lot of it, could either be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your tastes. I personally found the voice acting to be a very bad thing. The setting of these games is essentially an anime historical fantasy loose parallel to World War II. Yet the characters all sound like prepubescent Mickey Mouse, whiny, stereotypical anime characters. Like, golly gee, war sure is tough sometimes, you guys. Like, wow, okay, that's really insightful. It made it somewhat difficult to believe or care much about the characters, though they did succeed in a few instances. You know, there were a couple of times, one time in particular in the 4th game, where I lost one of my snipers to permadeath, and it was honestly a little crushing. I mean, yes, I could just replace him with another sniper, but he was a pretty good sniper. I was pretty upset about that. But I had such a difficult time with the battle that I lost him in that I just had to keep going. Although the two games feature the same number of chapters, 18, the first game has fewer battles, fewer cutscenes, and is all around a bit shorter. So you might be thinking that the first game would be the place to start and see if you like it. But honestly, I think you could skip the first one altogether and just get Part 4. Part 1 is in no real way necessary to playing Part 4, and vice versa. They stand alone very well. Also, in the first game, they were just starting to experiment with some of the series' unique or unusual design elements, and in my opinion, they hadn't really worked the kinks out yet. Both games feature some illogical difficulty fluctuations, but in my opinion, the first game goes a little too wild in that regard. Honestly, a lot too wild in that regard. So meaning that instead of the game gradually and steadily gaining in difficulty as you progress, it almost feels randomized. Like you'll have a normal battle, then you'll have an insanely hard battle, then an easy battle, then a hard one, then a hard one. It's all over the map. There's no logical progression to it, and that gets really frustrating. I mean, you could have somebody who rage quits this game on like the 3rd or 4th mission, not knowing that the game will get easier, but then also harder again. So whatever. I know you could argue that those kinds of peaks and valleys are more realistic of what a soldier might experience. Like, a soldier isn't going to experience necessarily every battle is a little bit harder than the next, right? But I'm not really interested in that. I'm playing a video game. This is clearly a game. It is not a simulator. So first and foremost, it needs to focus on being a good video game, because that's what it is. The good news is that by the fourth game, they mostly have that issue figured out. However, the only real downside to part 4 is the excessive, crazy excessive amount of cutscenes, which may tempt you to leap through your nearest window. You're just going to get or at least I did. I mean, some people might love it and eat it up, but just collectively, probably hours of anime cutscenes with these whiny little children who... Anyways, so you may feel like you're getting mixed messages here. What's the verdict? Are these games good or bad? Are they worth playing? The answer is both. Both of these games are both good and bad. If they seem like they might appeal to you, then I would say start with the fourth game. And if you fall completely head over heels in love with the fourth game, then, maybe check out the other games in the series. But number 4 is, I would say, overall the best introduction. So start there, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the combat, more especially in part 4, like I said, because it's more balanced. I had a good time with it, but I don't think that I'll really be checking out any of the other games in the series, like 2 or 3 or any games that happen to follow 4. I've just... I played 2 of these games, and I like I said, I had a good time, but I kind of feel like, that's enough. A more compelling story and a more compelling lineup of characters could have changed that for me, entirely. If I was more invested, I'd probably be trying to track down every one of these games. But the combat alone, while novel, it was good, but I've kind of had enough. On the topic of the story and the characters, I also have to admit that I'm probably just not the target audience for this game. While the core gameplay could appeal to a wide variety of people, the way that they chose to tell the story feels like it's really hard targeting kind of hardcore anime fans, which I am not. But if you are, you might absolutely love this game. You can get Valkyria Chronicles 4 for $30, or the complete edition of Part 4, which I would say is not really necessary, for $50. This game, Part 4, is probably worth the $30, but I think I'd recommend adding it to your wish list and waiting for a sale, unless, of course, this feels like a really urgent purchase for you. The first Valkyria Chronicles sells for $20, but as I mentioned, you can skip it entirely or wait for a sale. Or you can do what I did and buy parts 1 and 4 in a bundle together as one purchase for $40, which is a relatively good deal when you look at the prices of the 2 games. If you don't think that you're going to be bothered by the first game's relative lack of fine-tuning, I am definitely trying to warn you, though. The first game is very rage-quittable, in my opinion. I actually uninstalled it completely off of my system twice and just was like, I'm never going to finish that game. Finally, I did just recently. But if you think that would be a deterrent for you, then skip the first game. Also, to keep in mind, the download sizes are fairly chunky. The bundle comes in at 18.2 gigs, I think. Yeah. And Part 4 alone takes up about 11 gigs of that. But is worth it if you think that you're going to enjoy the strategy combat. Anyways, that pretty much does it for this one. Please click like and subscribe if you'd like to see more from me. I'd like to give a big shout out to the approximately 4 people who consistently give me a thumbs up on my videos. That's awesome. I love to see it. Thank you. Anyways, look, I'll see you guys next time, whenever that may be. Bye-bye.
Yes. Oh, I know. And you know there's a war on, don't you? All right then, Mr. Artist. We'll talk about fish sketching down at the station. Take him away.